The porch light was on. Yellow, warm, familiar. But the door didn't open. Not until I rang the bell. Not until she peeked through the curtain and looked, startled. "Oh, I thought you were staying somewhere else tonight," my mother said. Her voice low, eyes scanning the street behind me. As if she wasn't expecting company. But I wasn't company. I lived here. I stepped in holding the foil-covered tray from the hospital cafeteria. The air was heavy with cinnamon and turkey. Voices and laughter floated in from the dining room. I froze. There were shoes by the staircase, men's boots I didn't recognize. A pink suitcase in the hallway, children's coats on the banister. I turned to my mother. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "We didn't think you'd be home this early." I walked into the kitchen. My sister's voice rang out. My brother's booming laugh. Even Aunt Carol, who hadn't spoken to me since 2019, was here. I hadn't been invited. The table was set for 10. China plates, folded napkins, wine glasses catching the chandelier light. No empty seat. No space for me. I walked down the hall to my old room. The door was closed. I opened it. There were clothes hanging from the bedposts. Makeup bags on the dresser. My niece's name written on a sticky note above the mirror. My room was gone. I placed the tray on the hallway floor. The foil crinkled as I let go. I stood there surrounded by voices that didn't pause when I walked in. Not one person asked, "Where's Melissa?" I was invisible. In the house I had paid for, in the family I had sacrificed everything for. The tray stayed on the floor, untouched. That night I slept in my car, parked 4 blocks down next to the pharmacy. I told myself it was fine, just a misunderstanding. But deep down I knew they had already made space for someone else, and it wasn't me. Where are you listening from? Has your family ever made you feel invisible? Dad's first heart attack happened on a Tuesday, October 2018. The leaves outside were copper and gold drifting past my windshield as I sped across town. I just finished a 12-hour shift. My scrubs still smelled like antiseptic and latex gloves. My phone rang and my brother's name lit up the screen 3 times in a row. That was never good news. When I walked into the ER, Dad was pale, silent, hooked up to monitors. His hands looked small without his wedding ring. Mom sat beside him, her purse clutched tight on her lap as if holding it could fix something. "He'll need help at home," the doctor said. "Regular meals. Meds. Physical therapy appointments." My brother had already started shaking his head. "I mean with the twins' soccer schedule." My sister on speaker from San Diego said, "I wish I could fly out, but with Jake's work trip." And then all eyes turned to me. No one asked me. They just waited for me to say yes. So I did. I moved back into my childhood home by the end of the week. It was supposed to be temporary just until Dad got stronger. But temporary turned into seasons. Fall gave way to winter. Then spring. And I stayed. I used my savings to pay for grab bars in the bathroom. Then a better wheelchair. Then a stair lift. The heating bill doubled that January. Mom forgot to renew the insurance. The mortgage was 2 months behind. So I paid it. Quietly. No receipts, no promises. Mom always said, "We'll settle everything once the estate clears." And I believed her. I wanted to believe her. Dad's second stroke hit harder. He couldn't speak after that. He'd look at me with tears in his eyes while I fed him applesauce. My friends stopped texting. They had their own lives. Happy hour invitations dried up. My days became a loop, waking at 5:30. Checking his meds. Washing linens. Fighting with the insurance company. And when I wasn't caregiving, I was picking up shifts at the clinic, trying to keep my license active. I was tired, but I kept going. Because family meant something. Because I thought if I just loved harder, tried more, sacrificed enough, they'd see me, value me. But love like that, unbalanced and unreciprocated, corrodes you from the inside. I missed Maya's baby shower. I didn't have the money for a flight. Didn't have anyone to cover Dad. My sister posted a picture of the cake on Facebook. Pink roses, a gold banner that said, "Best aunt ever." It wasn't meant for me. There was a Sunday that stuck with me. Spring 2022. The magnolia tree had started blooming again. I walked into the kitchen and found Mom sitting with our cousin Jean. They fell silent as I entered. The kind of silence that doesn't mean peace. On the table was a notepad with a list of furniture. Each item had a name beside it: my siblings, my cousins. The dining table was labeled Maya. The piano for James's oldest. My name wasn't anywhere. When Mom saw me looking, she flipped the paper over. "Just planning ahead," she said. I spent that night in the laundry room, folding clothes just to keep my hands busy. The dryer rumbled like a heartbeat in the quiet. How do you ask your own mother if she's erasing you from her life? How do you confront the truth when it's been brewing silently for years? I thought about asking, then didn't. Because I already knew the answer. That summer, I covered the final balance on the house. $112,000, paid in full from my retirement fund. Dad had slipped into full-time care by then. Mom couldn't keep up with the paperwork. It felt right, like I was preserving something sacred. A legacy, a home. I even told myself, at least this way, they'll be safe. But I never stopped to ask, will I be safe too? Sometimes I'd wake in the middle of the night. The house would creak in the way old houses do. And I'd wonder, if I left tomorrow, would anyone even notice? One morning, I found a message scribbled in my niece's handwriting taped to the refrigerator. "Don't eat the pie, it's for Grandma and the guests." I hadn't even known we were having company. That weekend, the guest bathroom had fresh towels. My old closet was emptied. There were gift bags in the hallway. Laughter behind closed doors. But no one told me a thing. I told myself stories. That they were busy. That it wasn't personal. But it was always personal. Every forgotten invitation. Every unspoken conversation. Every time they walked past me like I wasn't standing right there. Still I stayed. Because that's what good daughters do. They carry the weight. Even when it's never acknowledged. Even when it breaks them. But no matter how hard I tried, I was always just one step outside the frame. One seat away from the table. One name missing from the list. And deep down, I think they liked it that way. There was a Sunday in late September when the house felt unfamiliar. Not messy, not loud, just unfamiliar. The kind of quiet that isn't peace. The kind where something moves underneath the silence. Mom was in the kitchen, but the radio was off. No soft jazz, no humming. She stood there scrolling on her phone, lips pressed thin. When she noticed me, she slid it into her apron pocket. No smile. "Morning," I said. She nodded. Then turned back to the sink. The coffee was already brewed, but there was only one cup on the counter. I poured mine in silence. The mug I'd been using for years, blue with a crack by the handle, was gone. In its place, a clean white one. No one said anything about it. I noticed small things like that, subtle but sharp. The framed photo of Dad and me gone from the living room shelf. Replaced with a picture of all the cousins at Maya's wedding. I hadn't been able to go. I'd been here spoon-feeding Dad yogurt while everyone danced in matching blush tones. There was a group chat. I didn't know about it until I saw it flash across Mom's phone. Family gala, Thanksgiving planning. 12 names. Mine wasn't one of them. I stood in the doorway. She didn't realize I'd seen. Or maybe she did and didn't care. The sound of the fridge buzzing filled the room. Later that week, James called. I was folding towels in the laundry room on speaker. He asked how Mom was doing. Then said Maya and the kids are flying in next month. We'll probably stay at the house for the holidays. The house, I asked. He hesitated. I mean, just for a few nights. You know. Mom's place. I waited. No mention of me. No, we'll coordinate. No, do you mind? That night, I pulled into the clinic parking lot and just sat there. The rain tapped gently on the windshield. My shift wasn't until morning. But I needed space. The car smelled like stale coffee and old receipts. The seat still had the fleece blanket I used for naps between patients. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and whispered to no one. What am I even doing? When I came home, the hallway lights were off, but the television was glowing in the living room. Laughter drifted out, not from Mom. It was Maya. She'd arrived early. Her suitcase sat beside the couch. My niece's pink duffel bag was at the foot of the stairs. No one told me. My room door was cracked open. The bed had new linens. Pink and white, decorative pillows. My journals were gone from the nightstand. The closet had been emptied. Boxes stacked in the corner labeled basement, M stuff. I ran my hand along the dresser. The mirror was smudged. Lip gloss. Mascara. I sat on the edge of the bed that was no longer mine. And just stared. Dinner that night was loud. They gathered around the table, Mom, Maya, her husband, the kids, even Jean from Dayton. I stayed in the kitchen, pretending to check prescriptions, pretending not to listen. But I heard everything. Melissa works too much, Maya said. She's always tired. Honestly, this place feels heavy when she's here. They didn't know I was still in the hallway. Or maybe they did. No one lowered their voices. 2 days later, a neighbor stopped me in the driveway. Big weekend, huh? She smiled. I blinked. Sorry, the gala. You must be excited. Heard it's a whole reunion thing. I didn't even know there was a gala. She patted my shoulder. Well, you deserve a break too, honey. I walked inside and found an invitation on the kitchen counter. Elegant cardstock, gold lettering. Maya's name in bold. A family fundraiser gala. With a slideshow of Harding family memories, hosted by Mom and the next generation. I flipped it over. No mention of me. I wasn't even listed in the RSVP contact. That evening, I cooked dinner. Out of habit. Salmon, roasted potatoes, steamed broccoli. The dining room table was already full. Maya smiled at me like I was staff. James was pouring wine into glasses I bought. Mom was laughing, light, happy, distant. I placed the serving platter down. No one said, thank you. After dinner, I washed every dish. My hands pruned in the water. The sponge smelled faintly of lemon and steel. Behind me, they were passing around photo albums, laughing at old memories. I peeked over. There were no photos of me. Later, I found Maya in my old bathroom brushing her teeth. Hey, I said softly. She didn't look up. Did you know you're staying in my room? She paused, then shrugged. Mom said it was fine. That was it. No apology. No recognition. She walked past me without another word. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the back porch in my coat watching the porch light flicker. The wind carried the scent of distant barbecue from a neighbor's yard. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked. Inside, they were singing happy birthday to one of the kids. I wasn't invited. I hadn't even known it was someone's birthday. I clutched my mug tighter. The tea had gone cold, but I held it anyway. I thought about every unpaid bill. Every time I called the pharmacy. Every late-night drive to the ER. Every shift I skipped. Every dollar I'd taken from my retirement fund. All for a family that looked through me. Past me. As if I were a ghost in their curated holiday photo. I wanted to scream. To bang on the window. To ask. Do you even see me standing here? But I didn't. Because deep down I already knew the answer. It started with my name missing from the Wi-Fi. I'd been using the same network for years, Harding Home. But one morning after a shift I couldn't connect. I went into settings. There were 3 new networks. Harding Guest, Maya Fam, and one with a locked icon, HH Private. I walked downstairs holding my phone. Mom did the Wi-Fi change. She didn't even look up from her crossword. Oh, James helped me update things. Maya said we needed better security. Did anyone think to tell me? She shrugged. You're hardly home anymore. I laughed. Not from humor. From disbelief. I'd been home every day for 6 years. That evening, I asked James about it. He was pouring himself bourbon in the kitchen, using Dad's crystal tumbler. The one he never let anyone touch. Just organizing things, James said. Making it easier for Mom. Streamlining. Streamlining what I asked. He smiled tight and polite. This house. The estate. Everything. I stared at him. Whose house exactly? He didn't answer. Later I opened the family laptop in the den. The desktop background had changed Maya and the kids in front of a beach. There were new folders: Holiday Budget, House Timeline, Legacy Plan 2025. I clicked. Inside were spreadsheets, documents. One labeled Distribution Draft, Property and Assets. Dated 3 weeks ago. My name didn't appear until page 4. A footnote. Melissa reimbursed via living arrangement support 2019-2023. Living arrangement. That's what they called 6 years of unpaid labor. Of night shifts followed by doctor's appointments. Of empty bank accounts and unopened thank you cards. I felt dizzy. I printed it, every page. Every name that wasn't mine. Every decision made without me. I folded it into my coat pocket and went for a walk. The air was crisp. Fall leaves crunched under my sneakers. My chest burned from a mixture of cold and rage. Across the street, the Carter family was stringing lights on their porch. Their kids were laughing, dragging pumpkins up the steps. I paused and looked back at my house. The lights were off, the blinds drawn. A home I'd paid for, but no longer belonged to. That night, I didn't sleep in my bed. I couldn't. Maya had taken over the room entirely. Her hair tools were plugged in, her robe hung on the door. My framed nursing degree was in the hallway, leaning against the baseboard. I found a blanket and curled up on the couch. In the dark, I could hear Mom talking to James in the kitchen. She's just always here, she said. I think it's time she figured things out. James replied, It's not her house anymore, Mom. Silence. Then the clink of a spoon against a teacup. The next morning, I found a note on the table. Written in my mother's careful cursive. Melissa, please let Maya and the kids settle in. It's only temporary, thank you for understanding. No greeting. No love. Just a directive. Like I was staff. A nurse. A problem to be managed. I took a photo of the note. Then walked upstairs. The door to my old room was closed. I knocked. Maya opened it, phone in hand. She looked irritated. What I need to get my box from the closet. She sighed, stepping aside like it was an inconvenience. I knelt and reached for the blue box, the one with Dad's old letters, photos, and my nursing pins. As I pulled it out, a folder slipped loose. Inside was a document with Maya's name on it. Power of attorney. Secondary assignment. Signed. Dated. Notarized. I looked up. Maya was watching me. Expressionless. You weren't supposed to see that, she said. I live here, I replied. She raised an eyebrow. Do you? That night I cooked dinner one last time. Lasagna, Dad's favorite. As it baked, I set the table. Real plates. Napkins folded, wine glasses rinsed. They all came. Saturday, ate. Talked. No one thanked me. No one asked how my shift went. Afterward, I stood at the sink, hands wet, staring out the dark kitchen window. I couldn't see my reflection. Just the porch light glowing faintly through the glass. Behind me, chairs scraped. The dishwasher hummed. I dried my hands slowly. One by one. Then I walked to the living room. Mom was watching the news. Maya was on the couch texting. I cleared my throat. Can we talk? They both looked up. Surprised. Annoyed. I saw the documents, I said. The spreadsheets, the draft. Maya didn't blink. Mom pursed her lips. You're not being fair, I said, my voice shaking. I gave up everything. I paid for this house. I gave you years of my life. Mom stood slowly, her expression calm. Measured. We're grateful, Melissa, truly, but we think it's time you find your own place. You've done more than enough. My knees almost buckled. I gripped the edge of the mantel. This is my place, I whispered. I live here. I paid for it. We didn't ask you to, Maya said. And that broke something in me. I packed that night. Quietly, deliberately. Just the essentials: scrubs, documents, the blue box, my passport. I took one last walk through the house. The dining room. The faded wallpaper in the hallway. The corner where Dad used to nap with a book on his chest. I paused at the door. It was locked from the inside. Someone had flipped the bolt after I went upstairs. I let myself out through the side entrance. Into the cold. I sat in my car, keys in hand. The engine didn't start, not yet. Instead, I pulled out my phone. I opened the calculator app. Typed in every payment. Every grocery trip. Every oil change. Every tax. Then I opened my laptop and created a folder. Harding House, Evidence, 2018, 2024. I uploaded receipts, photos, email confirmations, screenshots of transfers, 6 years. Every dime. Every sacrifice. And then finally, I opened a browser window. Searched estate fraud attorney, Columbus, Ohio. The first name that popped up, a woman, late 40s. Specialized in elder abuse and caregiver compensation. I clicked schedule a consultation. My hand was steady. The waiting room smelled like lemon disinfectant and bad coffee. A couple sat across from me, young, anxious. She was crying into her sleeve. He held her hand, silent. I stared at the clock. The second hand twitched. Then again. And again. I hadn't told anyone I was here. Just typed the address into my phone, parked 2 blocks away, and walked in. It felt safer that way. When the attorney opened the door and called my name, I stood slowly. Like my body weighed more than it should. Like 6 years of silence had finally sunk into my bones. Her office was warm. Bookshelves. A mug with the words, "Still she rises." I sat down and placed my folder on the table. Inside, printouts. Bank statements, receipts, photos of prescriptions. Handwritten notes from Mom. "Can you cover electric again this month?" The attorney flipped through them, her expression unreadable. When she looked up, her voice was calm. Measured. "This isn't uncommon." I blinked. "It's not unpaid caregivers. Especially daughters. Especially those without children of their own." She paused. "Especially when there's money involved." Her words weren't cruel, just factual. But something in me cracked anyway. I wasn't unique. Just another quiet woman erased by her own family. She asked questions. I answered in order. Dates, transfers. How long I'd lived there. I told her about the spreadsheet. The footnote. The Wi-Fi change. The note on the table. She nodded, taking notes. When I hesitated, she asked softly, "What do you want?" "Melissa?" I froze. No one had asked me that in years. I didn't know how to answer. "I want to be seen," I said finally. "To matter." Back in the car, I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. There were new lines around my eyes. The kind fatigue leaves behind when love isn't enough. I thought about going back to the house. But my hands didn't move toward the ignition. Instead, I drove to a grocery store 2 towns over. Walked the aisles slowly. Not for food. Just to feel anonymous. I passed a mother holding her toddler. A couple arguing near the cereal. 2 teenagers giggling by the bakery. All of them moving through life like it made sense. I was a shadow among them. Unseen. That night, I slept at a cheap motel off the highway. The carpet was thin, the heater rattled. The sheets smelled like bleach. But I had a door that locked. A bed that was mine. Silence that didn't hum with judgment. I placed my phone on the nightstand, turned off notifications. Then I cried for the first time in months. Not loud. Just slow, quiet tears. The kind that soaked the pillow without warning. The next morning, I checked my email. Nothing from James. Nothing from Mom. Nothing from Maya. Just a coupon from Walgreens. And an automated message from the clinic: shift coverage needed this Friday. I stared at the message. I hadn't picked up a full shift in weeks. I'd forgotten how it felt to have something of my own. I typed back, "I'll take it." Back at the clinic, the staff greeted me with small smiles. One nurse said, "Good to have you back." I nodded. Didn't trust my voice to say more. By noon I'd fallen into rhythm. Vitals. Forms. A patient with swollen ankles. A child with a rash. It was ordinary. It was mine. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't defined by what someone else needed. At lunch, I sat outside with a turkey sandwich. The sun was warm on my face. My ID badge caught the light. Melissa Harding NP. Still me. Still here. That evening I got a call. Blocked number. I let it ring twice. Then answered. Mom's voice. Soft. Too soft. "I just wanted to know if you were okay." I didn't respond. She filled the silence. "I didn't mean to hurt you." I waited. No apology. Just a pause. "We need to talk," she added. "There's so much you don't understand." I ended the call. Not out of spite, out of clarity. I understood more than she thought. I understood what it meant to be useful but not loved, needed but not respected. Present but never chosen. Later that night, I sat at a diner counter with a cup of weak coffee. The waitress called me sweetheart. Refilled my cup without asking. Behind me, an old couple argued gently about the bill. The sound of silverware clinking. A toddler's laugh from the next booth. Life unremarkable and beautiful. I took out my notebook. Wrote down a list. What I gave time, money, love, years. What I lost: home, trust, belonging. What I still have: myself. I drew a line under the last word. Closed the book. And whispered to no one. They don't get to write the ending. I started with a spreadsheet. Old school. Color-coded. Labeled tabs. Groceries. Utilities. Pharmacy runs. Mortgage payments. The first entry was from November 2000 and $1864.79 at CVS. Dad's prescriptions. The receipt was still folded inside my kitchen drawer. I opened it. Smoothed it flat. Then scanned it into the folder. Harding House, evidence 2018, 2024. I kept going. Gas station charges, co-pays. The wheelchair ramp I paid for with my bonus. Emails from insurance. Text messages from mom. "Can you float the electric this month? I'll write you a check next week." She never did. Each click felt like a heartbeat. Each receipt a confession. Each file a quiet scream. This wasn't pettiness. This was clarity. For 6 years I gave everything. They called it help. I called it life. I spoke to the attorney again. She leaned back in her chair, skimming the document stack I brought. Every page had a timestamp. Proof. Paper. "You've done your homework," she said. I kept thinking if I just gave them more time, more love. My voice cracked. They'd treat me like family. She looked at me steady. "You're not alone, Melissa. This happens more than you know. But not everyone has the courage to document it." I laughed. But it sounded like something breaking. We drafted the letter together. Not angry. Not dramatic. Just legal. A formal notification of financial contribution. A summary of asset claims. A note requesting acknowledgement before estate discussions proceed. "We're not threatening them," she clarified. "We're informing them. The truth doesn't need exclamation marks." That night I sat on the motel bed reading the letter over again. 3 pages. Neutral tone, no room for denial. I sent it to James, Maya, and Mom. CC'd the attorney. Then I turned off my phone and sat in the dark, listening to the heater buzz, feeling everything and nothing at once. 2 days passed. Then one email arrived from James. "This feels excessive, Melissa. We've all made sacrifices. We thought you were family, not a creditor." I stared at the words. Creditor. 6 years. And that was the label they gave me. Mom didn't respond for 4 more days. Her message was short. "I'm disappointed you chose this route. We never asked you to give so much." That sentence sat with me, like a stain I couldn't scrub. I whispered it out loud. We never asked. But they never stopped taking. Not once. I didn't reply. I printed their responses. Slid them into the folder, dated, marked, filed. And then I kept going. I requested bank records. Checked my 401k, calculated the early withdrawal penalties. It was worse than I remembered. $112,000. Gone. That wasn't help. That was theft wrapped in a mother's gratitude and a sister's silence. I drove by the house once that week. Didn't stop, didn't knock, just watched. The lights were on. There were balloons in the window, someone's birthday again. Maya's car was in the driveway. Mine used to be there. Now I parked across the street. Like a stranger. Back at the clinic, I started picking up more shifts. I worked late, took on difficult patients. Said yes to every extra hour. I didn't want time. I wanted motion. Motion kept the grief from crystallizing. One night after a double shift, I found myself in the staff break room. Alone. There was a coffee pot half full. Someone had left a banana with a sticky note, "Take me." I sat down. Unwrapped the banana. And cried. Not the collapsing kind. Just slow, private grief. For the woman I'd been. For the love I thought would protect me. For the years no one would give back. But I wasn't broken, just cracked open. And rebuilding. I signed the lease on a small apartment 2 weeks later. 1 bedroom. 2nd floor. Worn hardwood floors and a leaky faucet. But it was mine. I bought a couch. Assembled it myself. Hung a calendar in the hallway blank except for one date circled in red. The 14th of March. The day the attorney would file my official claim to the estate. The morning of filing, I wore my clinic scrubs. No makeup, no perfume, just me. I stood outside her office holding the signed documents. My hands were steady. My back was straight. She smiled as I walked in. Ready? I nodded. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like breath. Like space. Like a chair finally pulled out for me at a table I built. That night, I bought myself flowers, sunflowers. Even though it was March, I placed them in a glass on the windowsill. Let the sunlight catch the yellow petals. Let the silence be mine again. Would you have stayed silent or spoken up for what was rightfully yours? If your own family told you, "We never asked you to give so much," would you still forgive them, or would you speak up for what you're owed? Tell me below. Your voice matters. Subscribe to EN Reddit Story for more real stories of justice, healing, and quiet empowerment after 40. The 14th of March was cold. Gray sky. Rain tapping soft against the windshield. I sat in the parking lot outside the courthouse, watching people rush by with umbrellas and briefcases, everyone moving toward something. I checked the time, 9:47 a.m. Filing wasn't until 10. But I needed the stillness, the moment before the shift. Inside the building was quiet. Marble floors. Fluorescent lights. A faint scent of printer ink and old paper. My attorney met me in the hallway. She wore gray slacks, a navy coat. Professional. Calm. Like this was just business. For her, maybe it was. But for me, this was sacred. This was 6 years' worth of silence given a spine. Every invisible act finally documented. Every erased dollar finally counted. The clerk accepted the forms with a bored nod. Stamped the corner, filed it away. That was it. No applause, no music. Just done. But I walked out feeling 10 pounds lighter. 3 days later, the letter arrived at Mom's house. Certified mail, signed delivery. I had it confirmed. They opened it that evening. James called the attorney the next morning. Angry, dismissive. But she didn't flinch. It's within her legal right, she told him. And long overdue. I didn't hear from them for a week. Not one message. Not one phone call. Then came the email from Maya. A single line. Why are you doing this to the family? To the family. As if I weren't part of it. I didn't reply. But I reread her words 5 times. I wasn't doing this to the family. I was responding to the exclusions, to the rewritten narratives, to the financial gaslighting dressed up as tradition. That weekend, I sat in my new apartment organizing my files. The place was still bare. One table, one lamp, a mattress on the floor. But it was clean, quiet, mine. I boiled water for tea, opened my laptop, typed up a timeline. Each year, each major contribution, each instance of neglect or erasure. It wasn't to prove anything, it was to remember. To reclaim the truth. Because memory fades. But numbers do not. I found a box of old voice memos on my phone. Recordings from doctor visits, from pharmacy calls. Even one from Dad, his voice weak after the second stroke. "Thank you for doing all this, Mel," he'd said. "I know they don't see it, but I do." I hadn't heard that recording in over 3 years. It broke me, then built me again. I shared the audio with my attorney. She added it to the evidence file. Sometimes, she said, they don't believe facts until they hear a voice. The following week, James reached out again. His tone was different. Not friendly, but restrained. He wanted to talk options. To avoid court. To keep things within the family. I met him at a neutral location. A coffee shop near the hospital. He showed up 15 minutes late, wearing a suit. Like this was a boardroom meeting. I wore jeans. A cardigan. No makeup. No performance. He ordered an espresso. I didn't order anything. "I just think we could have handled this privately," he said. "We tried private," I replied. "For years. You ignored every quiet plea I made." He shifted in his seat. "Look. The house mom made certain promises, but there's no contract. It's all hearsay." I reached into my bag. Pulled out copies of the payments. The spreadsheet. The text messages. The note from Mom. Laid them on the table. "No," I said. "It's documented now." He didn't look at the pages. Just stared at me. "What do you want, Melissa?" There it was again. The question. The same one the attorney asked weeks ago. And now I had the answer. I want what's fair. Not just financially, but emotionally. I want acknowledgement. And a clean break. He laughed short, bitter. "You think that's how families work? We all give and take." I looked him dead in the eye. "I gave. You took." After that, things moved faster. My attorney sent a formal settlement request. Itemized. Non-negotiable. She kept emotion out of it. I didn't. In the quiet moments, driving, folding laundry, sipping weak diner coffee, I let the grief surface. Let the loneliness breathe. But I didn't let it lead. I wrote a letter, not legal, personal, to Mom. I didn't send it, just needed to write it. I spent 6 years trying to be enough. To earn a seat at the table I paid for. You didn't forget me. You chose not to see me. But I see myself now. And I'm not invisible anymore. I folded the paper, slipped it in the back of my planner. Someday I might mail it, or maybe not. Maybe it's enough that I wrote it. A week later, Mom called. I let it ring. Then sent it to voicemail. Her voice was quiet. Shaken. "Melissa, I don't know where things went wrong. I just want us back." I deleted the message. Not out of hate, but to protect the healing. I went back to work full-time, bought a second-hand couch. Started meal prepping on Sundays again. Went to a movie alone. Laughed. Out loud. It surprised me. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it comes in emails and printouts. In steady hands and silence. Sometimes it comes when you stop begging to be loved and start demanding to be respected. The hearing room wasn't dramatic. No high ceilings or banging gavels, just beige walls. Scuffed linoleum. A wooden table too small for the tension it held. Mom sat at one end. James beside her, arms folded. Maya was dialing into Zoom. Her voice already clipped like she'd rather be anywhere else. I sat across from them. My attorney at my side. A soft folder of documents in front of me. No makeup, just mascara. A blazer I bought on clearance. And the quiet weight of 6 years behind my spine. The mediator opened with pleasantries. Introductions. Case summary. Neutral tone. Then my attorney began. She didn't speak fast or loudly. Just clear. She laid out the timeline. The payments. The pattern of financial reliance. The unspoken agreement. Receipts, emails, voice memos, bank withdrawals. Texts from mom. We'll make it right when the time comes. The time had come. James interrupted. She lived there rent-free. His voice was tight, controlled, like someone trying not to lose the room. She also paid the entire mortgage, my attorney said. And the insurance. And repairs. And medical copays. All while sacrificing her own income. Mom shook her head slowly, not denial. Just disbelief. Like this wasn't the version of the story she'd prepared for. I finally spoke. You told me you'd make it right when the estate was settled. My voice was steady. My name isn't even in the draft will. Mom looked down at her hands, folded in her lap, wrinkled, thin. Still wearing her wedding ring. I never thought it would come to this, she whispered. You were always strong. Independent. I had to be, I said. Because no one else showed up. The mediator nodded slowly. He turned to Maya's voice on the screen. Maya, do you have anything to add? A pause. Then I think this has gone too far. We're talking about family. I looked directly into the camera. I am family. Or was. You just didn't see me unless you needed something. Silence. The kind that feels like a collapse. The session paused for a break. I stepped into the hallway. Fluorescent lights buzzed above. The vending machine blinked out of order. I leaned against the wall. Breathed in. Out. Again. I wasn't angry. Not in that moment. Just emptied. Mom came out 5 minutes later. No words. Just stood beside me. I miss Dad, she said quietly. So do I. She looked at me finally. Really looked. You were the one who stayed. I nodded. Not with pride. Just fact. I was. Back inside, the mediator presented his notes. He proposed a formal agreement. Full acknowledgement of Melissa's financial contribution. Reimbursement from the estate, exact amount verified by records. Removal of misleading clauses from prior drafts. Equal recognition in all asset conversations moving forward. He slid the proposal across the table. James refused to sign. Stood up, walked out. Maya disconnected. Only Mom remained. She stared at the paper. Then picked up the pen. Her hands trembled. But she signed. Every line. We didn't hug, didn't cry. Just stood. She whispered. You deserved better. I gave what I had, I said. That was my mistake. I walked out into the cold. The air felt sharper. Real. Alive. The sky was low and gray, but the wind had shifted. I didn't look back. Not even once. That night I stood in my apartment doorway. The sun was dipping behind the buildings. Orange light cut across the kitchen floor. I placed my keys in the bowl by the door. Hung my coat. Took a long breath. And exhaled 6 years of pretending. On the kitchen counter sat a letter. Certified. Signed and sealed. It confirmed what the hearing had established. Formal, unemotional. But it was justice. Quiet. Final, mine. I poured myself a glass of red wine. Cooked dinner. Just for me, nothing fancy. Pan-seared chicken. Green beans. Mashed potatoes from scratch. I played jazz from my phone. The same playlist Mom used to play while folding laundry. Funny what stays with you. After dinner, I sat by the window. Watched a neighbor walk his dog. A couple argued across the street, soft and familiar. Normalcy in all its imperfect forms. I wasn't waiting for a phone call, or an apology, or an invitation back. They had their story, but I had my voice now. And I wasn't giving it back. Closure didn't come wrapped in forgiveness. It came in evidence. In choosing myself. In walking away without flinching. Justice didn't need an audience, it just needed truth. Spring came quietly. Soft rains, green buds on trees. The sidewalks finally thawed. I opened the windows for the first time in weeks. Let the breeze move through the rooms like a reset button. My apartment still smelled like new paint and lemon cleaner. But there were signs of life now. Books stacked in corners, throw blanket on the couch. A half-finished puzzle on the kitchen table. I'd started cooking again, real meals. Not hospital leftovers or microwave dinners. Recipes with flavor-color joy. I played music while I chopped onions. Jazz on Sundays, old country on Fridays. Sometimes silence when I needed it most. The paperwork was settled. My name was now part of the estate. Official. Permanent. They didn't call to acknowledge it, but I didn't expect them to. Some justice lives in the mirror. In the version of yourself that finally looks back without I framed my nursing license and hung it above the desk. Next to it a photo of Dad and me. We were sitting on the porch, iced tea in hand, both of us smiling at something just out of frame. I didn't need the whole family in that photo. Just the piece that mattered. Mom sent a birthday card in April. No return address. Just a line inside, I hope you're okay. I'm not ready to talk, but I think about you every day. I placed it in the drawer. Didn't reply, didn't tear it up. Just let it exist. Like the memory of a place I once lived. At the clinic they offered me a permanent position. Full-time. Benefits. Leadership potential. I said yes. Not out of desperation. But because I wanted to say yes to something again, I bought new scrubs in soft blue. The ones with extra deep pockets. A small silly luxury. But mine. On a Tuesday morning, I passed the mirror in the staff break room. Caught my reflection. I didn't look tired anymore. Not invisible, just solid. Present. A woman who had been through fire and didn't come out clean but came out whole. I started walking in the evenings. Not fast. Just around the block. Sometimes with a podcast, sometimes with my thoughts. One night I passed a house with wind chimes on the porch. The sound caught me soft, high trembling. And just like that I remembered something. A younger me. Sitting on my parents' steps barefoot. Listening to Dad play guitar inside. It didn't sting. Not anymore. Some memories stay. Even when the people don't. I planted basil in a pot on my windowsill. Watched it grow slow and steady. Cut it for pasta. Watered it on Thursdays. It sounds small, but after years of giving away everything, tending to something for yourself feels radical. One afternoon I got a text from a former patient's daughter. She just wrote, "Thank you. You made my mom feel safe." I'll never forget that. I sat with the message. Let it land. In all the years of being dismissed, there were still people who saw me. And more importantly, I saw myself now. I didn't chase apologies anymore. Didn't wait for Maya to understand. Didn't hope James would come around. They'd built a version of the family that didn't include me. And I finally understood that was their loss. Not mine. Legacy isn't a name in a will. It's the way you choose to stop bleeding for people who never bring bandages. A few months later, I hosted dinner. Just 3 friends. Wine, laughter, mismatched plates. No performance. No silence stretched tight with guilt. We talked about work. About grief. About joy that sneaks up on you. One of them raised her glass to toast. 2 new roots. I smiled. Not because it was perfect, but because it was enough. If you've ever given too much, if you've been the one who stayed, if you've ever paid the price for love that never came back to you, then you know what this feels like. And if you've found the strength to walk away. Have you ever been written out of your own story only to write yourself back in? If you've ever been here, tell me below. You're not alone, your voice matters. You are not invisible, you are the legacy. Subscribe to EN Reddit Story for more real stories of justice, healing, and quiet empowerment after 40.